The political elite in Washington assert that the American people are undertaxed. The only way to balance the budget, from their perspective, is a big increase in the tax burden. The only debate, at least in their minds, is how to fleece the American people. My name is Piali Bhattacharya from Young Americans for Liberty, and I'm narrating this Economics 101 video for the Center for Freedom and Prosperity to explain 7 arguments against higher taxes. 1. Tax increases are not needed. Tax revenues are supposed to almost double in the next 10 years, jumping to more than $4.3 trillion. And that's assuming that all of the 2001 and 2003 tax cuts are made permanent. And since government spending is currently about $3.7 trillion, all that is needed to balance the budget is to make sure that spending does not increase by more than $600 billion. Politicians could increase spending by about $60 billion each year for the next 10 years and still balance the budget without a tax hike. And if taxes do increase, it simply means that the budget would be balanced at a higher level of spending. 2. Tax increases encourage more spending. There's a debate in the academic literature about whether higher taxes lead to higher spending or whether higher spending leads to higher taxes. This causality debate is interesting, and Richard Vedder of the American Enterprise Institute recently estimated that every dollar of new taxes leads to $1.17 of new spending. But it doesn't matter which way the causality runs. Higher taxes are bad if they cause more spending, and higher taxes are bad if they are the result of more spending. In either case, the spending is only feasible if taxes are increased. Milton Friedman was right in the 1990s when he warned that, in the long run, government will spend whatever the tax system will raise, plus as much more as it can get away with. 3. Tax increases harm economic performance. Higher taxes facilitate higher spending, and this hurts economic growth by diverting resources from the productive sector of the economy. But higher taxes also discourage growth by penalizing productive behavior. Higher tax rates on income and wealth creation, for instance, discourage work and entrepreneurship. Likewise, higher tax rates on saving and investment reduce capital formation, reduce productivity, and lower wages. 4. Tax increases foment social discord. Politicians use taxation to create hostility among different groups. The most obvious example is the use of class warfare tax policy. When politicians want more money, they almost always publicize proposals to soak the rich. The only problem, from the perspective of the politicians, is that there are not nearly enough rich people to finance big government. Moreover, the top 10% of taxpayers already pay the lion's share of the tax burden, and further increases on the tax burden on these people would probably be futile, since they would simply choose to earn less money or put more of their assets into tax shelters and other loopholes. This is why the middle class is the ultimate target. That's where the big money is to finance more spending. But in order to weaken the opposition of average Americans, the politicians pretend that they will impose even bigger tax increases on upper-income taxpayers. 5. Tax increases almost never raise as much revenue as projected, because taxpayers change their behavior in ways that reduce the amount of tax they pay. This is the Laffer curve, and it simply means that if politicians double a tax rate and think they will get twice as much money, they are sorely mistaken. People will respond by using loopholes or changing the way they earn income, or people will respond by choosing to work less, save less, and/or invest less. The crowd in Washington will probably still get more money, but not nearly as much as they expect. 6. Tax increases encourage more loopholes. Whenever tax rates increase, that means that there's a corresponding increase in the demand for deductions, credits, exemptions, shelters, preferences, and other loopholes. When Ronald Reagan was inaugurated, the top tax rate was at an astronomical 70%. This meant that rich taxpayers saved 70 cents for every dollar of deductions they found. By 1988, however, the top tax rate was down to 28%. Which meant that a $1 tax loophole was only worth 28 cents. Tax loopholes require taxpayers use at least some portion of their income in ways that are not efficient. This distorts the allocation of resources in the economy and undermines economic performance. 7. Tax increases undermine competitiveness. Globalization has changed the economic landscape. Jobs and investments now have much greater ability to move cross borders, and one of the determining factors is tax rates. Simply stated, investors, producers, and entrepreneurs care about both earning money and being able to keep the fruits of their labor. Governments now have to compete with each other. Top personal income tax rates in the industrialized world averaged more than 67% back in 1980. But because of tax competition, the average top tax rate is about 25 percentage points lower. The same is true of corporate tax rates, which have dropped from about 48% in 1980 to less than 25% today. Unfortunately, America is beginning to fall behind in the race to attract jobs, investment, and entrepreneurship. Tax policy has moved in the wrong direction ever since the Reagan tax cuts. Income tax rates are higher, the corporate tax rate is higher, and the tax code certainly is more complex and burdensome. The argument against higher taxes is powerful. Giving more money to government, in the words of humorist P.J. O'Rourke, would be like giving whiskey and car keys to teenage boys. Politicians would increase spending, and America would lose jobs and investment. That's a bad outcome. I'm Piyali Bhattacharya from Young Americans for Liberty. I hope that you agree with me and that you'll share this Center for Freedom and Prosperity video with others.